The Buddha gave us many teachings. He threw himself in to teaching. Having thrown himself into practicing, having fully realized awakening, having been requested to teach, he said yes to that completely. Of course, he did his own practiced in the morning. He even spent time in solitude for days or months at a time. But very often, he dedicated the whole day to teaching. He would leave in the morning after his own practice to go begging, and on the way to begging for his food, he would meet with mendicants, philosophers, ascetics of other traditions. Converse with them, sometimes debate with them, but always in a friendly way, and then leave, having influenced them in whatever way was appropriate, go begging, come back from his meals, spend some time in solitary abiding, typically in seated meditation, and then in the afternoon, it's very common that he would spend hours talking with lay people. That was often the time when they would come. Having done their work in the morning, they would come in the afternoon to ask him questions, to learn the Dharma from him. And then in the evening, the monks would emerge from their own seclusion and come to him and ask him their own questions. Or he would gather them together the later evening and give talks, often long and quite complex lectures. Then, in the late night, from sometimes, say 10 to about midnight, he would teach any deities who came, or he would even visit them, and then he would sleep from midnight until 2 and begin again with his practice, his seated or walking meditation practice. He taught many, many sermons containing many, many doctrines. And it's important that we take these teachings, these doctrines, we make use of them, we grasp them correctly with examination and wisdom. We should then live them. We should demonstrate them with our behavior in our relationships. This treasure, this gift of the Dharma of the teaching is the greatest treasure, the greatest gift. And we have been very fortunate to encounter it. It's very important that we make use of it to the best of our ability. And that this should be done, of course, in, for example, meditation, but it should also be done in the way that we live our lives. As we say, if we know and do not do, then we don't really know. How we live is the appropriate measure of our realization. Now, this living is often a matter of going against social conventions. Of course, sometimes we go along with social conventions. That's reasonable and humble. But sometimes it's a matter of going against social conventions. As I like to say around here, you basically learn two things. You learn how to shut up, and you learn how to speak up. If you spend enough time here, then you'll learn how to do those two things. It's very sad that more of us don't know how to do those two things. We don't know how to do either one of them, actually. On the contrary, when it's time to shut up, we speak up. And when it's time to speak up, we shut up. It's very sad. We sit down to shut up. And instead, as many of us have probably noticed, we speak up. The voice in our heads just goes on and on and on and on and on. Or we're in a situation in which somebody has to come forward and do something useful, and that's exactly the moment when we freeze up. Our minds go blank. We've got nothing. Uh-oh. And then that moment passes, and no one did anything. And then quickly we learn how to speak up again as we complain in our minds about all those other people who didn't do what they should have done. We can also speak up about how I also didn't do what I should have done. But we don't do it in a way that actually allows us to later do what should be done. As we learn how to be quiet, tranquil, at peace, we also learn how to be powerful, strong, even rebellious. With this deep security, the deep safety of equanimity, we are then free to do what needs to be done. As we gain equanimity with all experiences, one of the experiences we gain equanimity with is our own knowledge of what's right and wrong, which is to say that we can't be threatened. We see this, and we see this deep equanimity in people who have transformed society. So knowledge, yes, you may hurt me, you may punish me, you may kill me, but I have equanimity with that. Of course, we say equanimity, and one of the main problems with Buddhism is that it values intellectually sophisticated teaching so much that we start to immediately feel that it's just worthless, that it's just words. We hear the word equanimity and we immediately think it's a shallow, meaningless thing. This is not shallow and meaningless. It allows us to do what must be done because we're not afraid of the consequences. It allows us to hear that quiet voice of truth in our minds. It simultaneously allows us to set aside the loud, meaningless voices and to hear the quiet, meaningful voice. Through that, we can do what must be done. Once we accept this responsibility to teach, to lead, to be of service, then we need to do it completely. We have to take a risk sometimes. It's not so bad. It's worth it. You have to have some courage. And yes, sometimes we'll mess up. And we should be open to the possibility that we did mess up. We should try something, then people may give us feedback that wasn't so good after all. We should consider that, because we might not be the only person in the whole world who knows something. So we should hear it. It's actually a big issue. As many of you know, I really enjoy working with teenagers, and I see it as a big problem that we tell teenagers, things like, well, don't worry about what other people think about you. And be true to yourself. These are very damaging teachings. That is exactly the age when you're first realizing, you come out of childhood into adolescence, and it's for the first time you realize, other people have experiences too. Other people see things differently from how I see things. And I can understand that. Start to really being able to understand that. And furthermore, other people have power over me. I have some power, and they also have power. These are very difficult realizations. It's very confusing. And if we say, be true to yourself, don't worry about what other people think about you, it's not encouraging this very deep understanding. That we're not the only person in the world who has an experience. That other people may know what we don't know. It may be worth listening to them. That's what teenagers are trying to learn in a way that an 8-year-old actually can't. You can talk to them about it, but it doesn't dig deep into their marrow. With a teenager, it does even if they don't want it to. That should be encouraged, because all of us should know how important it is that we receive feedback from others, rather than resist it, ignore it. However, others also don't have supreme authority. Others can be completely wrong. Everyone can tell you something, and they can all be wrong. That's possible. So what do we do about that? We have this deep sense of equanimity so that we can ask questions that are hard to ask that make us uncomfortable. We can experience the ignorance that we are subject to. This equanimity allows us to do what must be done. The Buddha could have happily died when he was 35 years old, but instead he taught for 45 years until he was 80 years old. Taught constantly, being of service constantly for all of those years, each of those days, in one way or another. Sometimes, as I say, that was through doing his own practice. But he was working on being of service rather than just passing away, which would have been the easy thing to do. But because he had equanimity, he could keep living. It would have been much more pleasant to just die and not have the tiresome, exhausting, irritating experience of teaching people like us. Instead of that, he could have just passed away, entered nirvana. That was his initial tendency, after all. Due to his equanimity, he could be of service. Now, Mara was very bothered. He was very concerned that the Buddha was going to start teaching now. He was very frustrated with this. Brahma, what are you doing? You messed everything up, he said. You shouldn't have come down and requested him to teach. If you just hadn't requested him to teach, he would be dead by now. Come on, Brahma. What are you doing? You're messing up everything. Remember Brahma? Brahma Sahampati, he was the guy who came down and requested the Buddha to teach. The Buddha was going to just enter nirvana, pass away. But the Brahma god came down and bowed and said, please teach. So Mara, another god, actually a higher god than Brahma, was annoyed at that. And so he decided he had to take matters into his own hands. And so he came to the Buddha soon after his awakening. And he said, you're so kind. You're such a wonderful teacher, such a wonderful guide. You're such a kind individual. I have a request for you. Please die. Please die now. I need to turn up these lights. Don't teach. Don't help people. Don't serve. Just die. It would be better for everyone. It would be easier for you. All of this teaching is so exhausting. And it would be better for everyone, because then they wouldn't have to do this hard path. It's so exhausting. It's so difficult. You know, they're meditating all day long. It's no fun. They have to meditate. Eventually, they even don't like meditating. Don't put everyone through that. Just die. It would be better. And the Buddha said, but I have responsibilities. There are things that I need to do. I've made commitments. I need to follow through with that. One of them, for example, is that I need to establish an order of monks. And establish an order of monks means that there are certain disciplinary codes that are formed, and also there are individuals within that group who have actually realized awakening. And Mara said, okay, that's too bad, but I guess you're going to do it, so I'll be back. So he went away, and the Buddha established the order of monks. We've discussed a little bit of that story. And so Mara came back and said, okay, you did it. Congratulations. Good work. Now die. And Buddha said, no, still have more to do. I have more to do with this life. I'm going to establish an order of nuns as well. That's harder. It's against tradition. No one has ever done that before, actually, in world history. That's not going to be easy. So I'm going to get to work on that. Mara said, okay, but I'll be back. So the Buddha got to work on that and succeeded. And did it in quite unusual ways. One of the most interesting one was that men didn't lead it. Women led it, made the rules, held the discipline. It was an organization of, by, and for women. And the Buddha forbade leadership to be held by men within that order, which is quite extraordinary for a lot of different reasons. Nowadays, we can think that that's just obvious, and of course women should be in leadership positions, but if we think that, then we have a lot of people to thank for their hard work. And it's not like we're superior or something because we happen to have had a lot of other people do work. We can't take credit for that. So that work was done. Quite amazing. And then, of course, he had to deal with the issues, like the monks wanted the nuns to mend their robes for them. And so he had to make rules. No, the nuns don't mend the robes, monks. That's funny. And he had to also deal with violence, because to create a way for women to leave what was, in many cases, slavery. Later on, it wasn't so established at the time, but later on it's made clear in texts like the Manusmriti that a woman's life consists of part 1, serving her father, and part 2, serving her husband, and then she's supposed to die. So, and often she literally was supposed to die, if you understand what I mean. I mean, she actually had to die when he died. So, to have a way out of that, this is amazing, and was extremely threatening. And so there was a great deal of difficulty in working through these societal structures. But eventually that work was done, and so Mara came back and said, okay, nice work, die. Please, this time, come on. Been waiting years for this. You've been making lots of problems. So many people have gotten free. Not just men, but women too now. Gosh, will you stop it? And the Buddha said, no, won't stop it. There's more to be done. Have to form the Sangha of lay men and also lay women. Make sure that the rules for how to live as a layperson are established so that people are living in an ethical way. And also make sure that there are people who have actually had realization in all 4 of these groups. So Mara had to wait even longer. It was terrible for him. But this is the commitment that the Buddha made. And so he did it. But it didn't end there. He made further changes. He had further impacts on society. The one which in my life has been most significant was his, and also the one that I spoke about at the Vesak ceremony at the beginning of this week when I was in Burlington, was his stand on discrimination, and in particular racism, his statement, his unequivocal statement that a person's value is determined not by their birth, but by their behavior. This is a radical statement which continues to be debated and fought today. It's been a long time of working on this, and we have a long way to go. Not sex, not race, not class. A person's value, a person's worth, a person's goodness is determined by their choices, their actions, their behavior, not their birth. This statement is more or less a declaration of rebellion against the status quo then and also to a large extent now. It's something that I was invited to support. And I was honored to do my best to give that support for a few years. This battle, this fight, this rebellion can't just be set aside because of some thoughts about equanimity. This is hard work. And to be able to discern what is right and what's wrong, to be able to do that hard work, whatever it takes, this is equanimity. Not just some passive method to allow the status quo to continue. As many of you know, Upali was one of the greatest of the Buddha's disciples, and he was a barber of the lowest caste. He heard some of the Buddha's clansmen speak about going and becoming monks, and he also wanted to become a monk, and so they suggested, in order to cut through their pride, as they set aside their caste and entered the Sangha, that he should be ordained first so that they would have to bow down to him and cut through their pride. They asked him if he would please do that. And so he said okay, and so he went and he was ordained, and then they were going to be ordained, but one of them couldn't bow down to him. His Shakyan pride, his Aryan pride, wouldn't allow him to bow down. And the Buddha told him, bow down. Bow down to your senior. And he knew he should do it, but he just couldn't do it. And so the Buddha said, this Sangha is like the ocean. Whatever river flows into the ocean, it just becomes the ocean. It loses its river name, and it becomes the ocean. And in the talk in Burlington, I talked about the Ganga Nadi. Anyone know what that is? The Ganga Nadi? No one knows. The Ganges River, yes. The Ganges. So the Ganges River, the Ganga Nadi, flows into the ocean. And then I talked about the Mississippi Nadi. Anyone know what that is? Yes? Yes, you got it. And the Nile Nadi and such, Amazon Nadi. So these great rivers all flow into the ocean. And once they flow into the ocean, they are lost in the ocean. They become one, no longer various rivers. In the same way, the Buddha said, when we enter this Sangha, this community, we lose our caste, class, distinctions. We lose those distinctions. Our birth is forgotten, and we become interested in our behavior. That's what we're interested in. So there's still seniority, but it's seniority simply according to ordination, which means to be ordained is to receive an order, which is the same term actually in Japan. You tokudo. Tokudo means take rank. So you receive a rank. And that's what determines seniority. Not anymore being a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, outcast, if you want to say that term, or any other race. It's not about that anymore. In the Mahayana schools, the same is said to be true of gender. The only order of seniority is according to time of ordination. And so he said, if you can't bow down, you can't join this sangha, this society. So you should bow down now. And with that encouragement, with that clarification, he could do it. And he did bow down. But the Buddha didn't even stop there. As many of you know, I had a big fight about this with other Buddhists. That we can't stop there. Yes, we should fight for equality. We should fight to overcome various forms of discrimination. But when we talk about diversity, it's not enough diversity. Our idea of diversity isn't diverse enough. It isn't just about race, gender, sexuality. It's not just about that. There are many more forms of diversity. Diversity of learning styles. For example, diversity of background. I often hear talk quite a bit about diversity of politics. It's very important that we have that. But beyond that, we can't even stop there. To go further than that. The Buddha was clear that we're doing this for the benefit of all beings. All beings. All living things. When we practice, we have to be aware of all living things. The Buddha made it clear that the first precept is to not destroy life. It wasn't anything about human life. This is very different. This incredibly universal vision is very different from most traditions. Certainly modern traditions of, for example, humanism, where the only thing we're worried about is, are human beings going to survive? This is extremely problematic. It's disgusting. It's just supreme ego. It's throwing away our humanity. As Harada Roshi says, the thing that makes you human is that you see the value of all living things. That is the point of being human. It's our job to see beyond our own egotistical sense that I'm this class, I'm this species. To go beyond that. The Buddha spoke about the importance of not cutting down forests, not burning forests. He was the first person who we know of who spoke about the importance of avoiding water pollution. He saw water pollution happening even then. He said, no, you have the responsibility to not pollute the water. And he didn't say don't pollute the water merely for the human beings who live downstream. He said it's for the living things right in the water. You have to be careful about this. This is incredible. He didn't say you should have no impact whatsoever. That doesn't make sense. Of course we have an impact. We're living things. We're part of this landscape. To say we should have no impact whatsoever is also ego. It's that we need to act with compassion, understanding that our actions determine our value, our goodness, our place in the world. All of these points, from the deepest points about liberation and equanimity to the practical points within the realm of responsibility, the broadest, you could say, or the highest points regarding social responsibility, regarding compassion for all beings. Each of these is a doctrine. And it's our job to correctly grasp each of these doctrines by examining them with wisdom. To correctly grasp them. Of course we have to grasp them. Of course we have to grasp them. We must grasp them. Use them. But understand that just getting attached to certain doctrines, to certain rules and regulations, that isn't going to do it. That isn't going to solve our problems. It has to have a larger purpose, a deeper purpose. An example here is that here we have to follow a very strict schedule. Essentially, that you follow a very strict schedule. You have to be on time. If you're not on time, then people get mad at you. Say, you should be on time. You say, yeah. And yet, it's interesting because someone around here doesn't really follow the schedule that well, right? So Catherine, well, you know Catherine came by, and she made a complaint when she came for her first retreat, saying it's very strange that you make everybody follow the schedule, but you, Soryu, are always late. You should be leading the way here. You shouldn't be late. Which I found very surprising, because I said, but I've never been late. I'm never late. I have not been late one time. Because I'm just on time. When I get here, that's when it starts. I've been on time every time. Now this to us can seem very strange. You can say, what is that? I don't like it. That makes me uncomfortable. Well, it's important for us to understand this at least a shallow level, but this today is about the deeper level. The shallow level is simply that it's my job to be concerned about the benefit of the whole community, and sometimes following the rules isn't of the greatest benefit to the community. For example, Catherine said this last time she was here, well, since you don't have to be on time, I'm going to take advantage of that and make you talk to me for another several minutes because I want to talk to you about something. And I know that you have to be somewhere, but tough. You can't be late. Well, it's my job at that time to assess what is actually of the greatest benefit to the community. That's my job. That's actually what my job is. That's why I'm called Forall. That's the whole point of that name. It's not really a name, more of a title. That's the point of it. That at that time I should be able to assess, okay, it means that I'm going to be present for for my other tasks here for several minutes less, but that means that other things may happen that may benefit the community, but, make an assessment in something like 1/10 of a second, and then act accordingly. So whoever is in this position should have everyone in mind and be willing to sacrifice their own preferences for the benefit of the community. And because a person is judged as being mature enough to live according to that character, they should be in such a position. If they are not judged as being that mature, then there's a big problem, which is a lot bigger than them maybe being 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even an hour late for something. If they don't have that character, if they don't have that honest consideration, compassionate concern, then there's a big problem. That needs to be seen clearly. Everyone should be looking for that because it matters. Doesn't mean you have to be mad and critical and constantly looking for problems. It's not about that. It's about trying to see, does this person really have our best interest in mind? That should be the expectation. That should be the basic job description. And if that's really true, then that is more important than any particular rule. And that can make us very uncomfortable. We don't want that to be true. We want everyone to follow the rules. And if we have that attitude, then we're just going to constantly want more and more rules to govern everyone, because we don't really trust each other. Right? I appreciate the people around here, like this guy over here, who's fighting against this constant expansion of the rule set. It's important, because you don't solve every problem by making a new rule. We should have as few rules as possible. Every time you make a rule, there are problems created by that rule. So we want everyone to follow as many rules as possible so that everyone's right about everything. It doesn't work that way. You have to realize something beyond the rules that tells you whether the rules are worth following. And we should be functioning from that place, and to the extent that we're functioning from that place, we don't need rules. Every time we institute a rule here, it's actually kind of a criticism of the community. It's saying that we failed to live according to wisdom. So instead we have to live according to a rule. That's too bad. We failed to demonstrate our compassionate concern for everyone. And so we have to make a rule. We failed to be aware, conscious, and so we have to make a rule. We failed to overcome our laziness, our self-centeredness, and so we have to make a rule. It's too bad. We wish we had 0 rules. That would be ideal. We should strive for having 0 rules. But the rules humble us. The rules help us to see that we have further to go. This, then, is what the teacher should really be demonstrating. Someone should be around showing that the rules are just fabrications, and there should be something. The teacher should be a symbol of the something that goes beyond the rules, that's more correct than the rules. And should remind us that our goal isn't to just get better and better at following rules. Our goal is to attain liberation. Understanding that liberation allows us to live with compassion. It isn't just a way to allow us to be jerks. Just allow us to do whatever we want. Liberation means that we're free from the need to do what we want. That's what equanimity is, and it's due to that equanimity is conscience. Therefore, we have this brilliant simile of the raft. Bhikkhus, I shall show you how the Dharma is similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir. The Bhagavan said this, Bhikkhus, suppose a man in the course of a journey saw a great expanse of water, whose near shore was dangerous and fearful, and whose further shore was safe and free from fear, but there was no ferryboat or bridge for going to the far shore. Then he thought, there is this great expanse of water, whose near shore is dangerous and fearful, and whose far shore is safe and free from fear, but there is no ferryboat or bridge for going to the far shore. Suppose I collect grass, twigs, branches, and leaves, and bind them together into a raft, and supported by the raft, and making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. And then the man collected grass, twigs, branches, and leaves, and bound them together into a raft, and, supported by the raft, and making an effort with his hands and feet, he got safely across to the far shore. Then, when he had got across and had arrived at the far shore, he might think thus, this raft has been very helpful to me, since supported by it and making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. Suppose I were to hoist it on my head, or load it on my shoulder, and then go wherever I want. Now, bhikkhus, what do you think? By doing so, would that man be doing what should be done with that raft? These are intelligent people, so they answered accordingly. No, Venerable Sir. By doing what would that man be doing what should be done with that raft? Here, bhikkhus, when that man had got across and had arrived at the far shore, he might think thus: this raft has been very helpful to me, since supported by it and making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. Suppose I were to haul it onto the dry land, or set it adrift in the water, and then go wherever I want. Now, bhikkhus, it is by so doing that that man would be doing what should be done with that raft. So I have shown you how the Dharma is similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping. Bhikkhus, when you know the Dharma to be similar to a raft, you should abandon even the Dharma. How much more so things contrary to the Dharma, the adharma. Even the teachings, how much more so the non-teachings. Even the truth, how much more so falsehood. Even what is right, how much more so what is wrong. What is good, how much more so what is bad. What is skillful, even more so what is unskillful. This is an extraordinary teaching. It's amazing to see someone being so clear. What I teach you, you should ultimately throw that away. This very thing that I'm teaching you, I want it to become obsolete for you. I hope that you don't need it. That you set it adrift. Let it go. This is for the purpose of crossing over. This is for the purpose of your liberation, not to become some new burden in your life. However, we should acknowledge how important it is that we actually bring it together, that we create a raft that will work, and that then we make a real effort. It isn't good enough to just make the raft and then get on it and get carried away by the current. You have to make an effort. It isn't good enough to make a pretty bad raft, to make it not very well, which is very common nowadays. We'll just come up with some weird spiritual teaching that sort of feels good, it's intuitive to them. They make a really bad raft. If you make this bad raft, then once you get out into this great expanse of water, it'll just fall apart. And then you'll drown. If you don't make an effort, the current will carry you away, and you'll go over the waterfall and die. It's essential that you make it well, but you understand it's still just a raft, and that then you make an effort, and you get across to the point where you don't have to make that effort anymore. That you actually get to a place of safety. That's the point, to actually get to a place of safety. We have to remember that that's the good for which we have walked this path. That's why we're doing this. That's the purpose of this. It isn't to be found in the raft. Wherever you look in the raft, you still won't find that safe far shore. The same way, wherever you look in these teachings, you won't find nirvana. You won't find the purpose of the teachings. You have to use these teachings as a raft to discover something independent of them. This is confusing for us. This is very hard for us to face. Of course, for us, since we may not have been brought up Buddhist and all this seems kind of foreign, we think, oh, it's easy to throw this away. But the truth is that the time when it's hardest to throw it away is, as the metaphor shows, at the moment that it has worked. The moment when we're most grateful for this, when we most appreciate it, is the moment when we have to throw it away. And so for most of us, we come into a retreat like this, and we have things that have worked for us. Whatever that is. Maybe we've thought things through really carefully and hammered out our views with our minds, with mental understanding. I feel like, that really got me here. That got me to safety. I'm not going to throw that away. Maybe it's our own spiritual yearnings, our sense that this is how it is and that's how it is. I've had these experiences and now I know that this is the truth. Then that's what you have to throw away. Whatever has worked for you, that's what you have to throw away. It isn't just some foreign, weird Buddhist teaching that I don't really connect with. It's not about that. if you do this, then you'll connect with this. It will work. You'll get to the far shore in a more powerful and safe way than these other things that I just mentioned. And then it will be very hard to throw this away because it worked. But that's essential for us. To truly come to a place of safety. But that isn't enough to then throw it away so that we're free to go wherever we want. That's why he said, last year's poverty wasn't true poverty. This is Kyogen. Last year's poverty wasn't true poverty. This year's poverty is true poverty. Last year, there was still some land that I could cultivate with my hoe. But this year, there's not even a hoe. I've lost everything, all of my land, all of my gardening tools. Now I'm truly poor. That's coming to a place of safety. This true, complete poverty is the far shore. But even then, Kyozan, yesterday I said Kyozen, sorry I didn't transliterate, that was an incorrect transliteration from the Chinese to Japanese. Yangshan is pronounced Kyozan in Japanese. Kyozan wouldn't accept it. He said, that's not enough. Can't you express something more? And then he said, this is seen in the twinkling of an eye. Even if you don't see it, even if you don't believe it, you still can't say that I've wasted my training, that I'm just a novice. And then Kyozan could see that he'd let go, even of emptiness. That a function had come forth, a life had burst forth. Whatever rules and regulations we're using, whether that's the rules and regulations here, whether it's the rules and regulations in our own minds, our way of seeing things, whether it's our emotions, yes, my emotions have really worked. I have to trust my heart, to follow my heart. I have to be logical. I have to understand. I have to move with my intuition. I have to fulfill my dreams. Whatever the thing is that you believe in, whatever the thing that has worked for you, that has taken you to here, that's made you capable of getting to this place of safety, wherever that is what you have to set aside now. That's exactly the thing to let go of. And then we can continue on. Then we can go where we want. We use these teachings as a raft, yes. We use them. But we understand that this is a construction, it's a fabrication. But it has a purpose. Don't forget that purpose. Don't get caught up in small affairs. Come to this point of true freedom, wisdom, that you can live in a way that's truly of benefit to the world, not just serving some system. This awakening to our true wisdom, true compassion, that allows our true life to emerge. Please, value this. Value this opportunity. It won't last long. It will not last long. I know that many of us here are young and we feel like our life is going to last forever. And death may happen to me someday. It's unknown. I have plenty of time. This is a mental illness. This is a sickness. Don't buy into this mental illness. This is the way that Mara convinces you to waste your life. This is a way of wasting your precious life. This is a way of telling yourself that your life is worthless. Don't buy into that. It's a lie. Your life is precious. Every day is precious. It matters. You can do good for yourself and others, and you should. And you'll be happy if you do. That doesn't mean just serving some system, getting caught on some raft, dragging it around with you everywhere. Not about that. There's a brilliance, there's a beauty that we've come to realize that allow us to live our vow. Please, have faith in that. Have faith in that and throw yourself into realizing it. This we can trust. Please, have deep faith, deep trust. Set out on this raft. Make a true effort with your hands and your feet. And go straight until you come to the safety of the other shore.